film buffs. It's Straight Shooter, and I'm back for another review. Welcome to an episode of How I See It. I'm sorry, I don't recall what episode number I'm up to, but it'll be in the description. And I'm at Team Sound Studios. No surprise there. And today, my spoiler review is going to be of Dolittle. Yes, that Dolittle, Dr. Doolittle. Not the Eddie Murphy version, but a new, I guess you would call it remake or reboot or whatever you want to call it. It's another version of Dr. Doolittle. Instead of starring Eddie Murphy, it stars Robert Downey Jr. And we have a bunch of known voices for the cast of the animals, such as Emma Thompson, Tom Holland, and many others that I can't recall at the moment just because when I was reading the credits at the end, I kind of lost track of all the names just because it's a pretty filled cast. Of the animals anyway, except for Robert Downey Jr., the supporting characters, the live action characters are okay, whatever. I think there was one character that was kind of funny, which was like the main enemy that was trying to track down Dolittle and stop him. He was kind of funny. So let me get into the setup of the movie a little bit and tell you what happens, and then I'll give you my thoughts. Dr. Dolittle closed his estate because his wife died at sea, and he is being a loner, doesn't really know what to do with his life. The animals are still around. They look after him, and he takes care of them and stuff like that. Until this little boy, who is the other protagonist in the movie, brings in a squirrel that he shot and is feeling guilty about it and wants Dr. Doolittle to help him. Dr. Doolittle resists at first, but he ends up helping him. Also, the Queen of England is looking for him because even though he's a doctor of mostly animals, he's also a doctor of medicine. He can help humans as well. And she thinks he's the most qualified to help her. She's sick, she's gravely ill, and he sets on a quest to look for this rare herb from a tree that's mythical in nature, but he thinks he knows where it is. Him and the boy sit on a journey with the animals, and there's a whole adventure on a ship, and the people that poisoned the queen are looking to stop him, and they catch up with him at the island. He meets an old nemesis who is the father of his wife. He has to find a tiger in a cage, and he ends up escaping, and then they find the place where the tree is, and he has to help a dragon because the dragon is killing people, but it's sick. And he ends up helping the dragon, and the dragon gives him the fruit from the tree, and he saves the queen and tells the authorities who it was that poisoned the queen and all this stuff. And the other thing about the movie that's different from the Eddie Murphy ones is that he can speak to the animals, but in the animals' language. When Eddie Murphy spoke to the animals, he was just like talking normal, and people are like, who are you talking to? And the animals are speaking back to him. But when he speaks, he's like, ooh, ha, ha, ha. Stuff like that. Go, go. And like, he's talking in the animals' language. And the other thing that was happening is the boy that was going with him was learning how to communicate with the animals too. He was starting to understand their language, and he was starting to learn to speak their language a little bit. So I thought that was kind of odd, because why is Dr. Doolittle so special if anyone that listens and tries to communicate with the animals can do it? But that's neither here nor there. Let's face it. It's geared towards kids, and it's a fantasy movie, so you kind of have to go with it. I like the performances. I mean, Robert Downey Jr. is always going to be a shoo-in for a good performance, even if he's playing Dr. Doolittle, which is a role that's been played before. He manages to bring his own gravitas to the role, and he makes the role interesting. Some of the voices of the animals, I think they fit the animals really well. I think the CGI was actually pretty decent. I didn't feel like I was watching a computer. I felt like I was watching actual animals. Obviously, when they move their mouths, they speak. That's CGI, but it doesn't take you out of the movie. And I think that's because technology has advanced to the point where it looks more realistic now. And every year that goes by, you're going to see it become more and more realistic, just like the games, PS4 and Xbox. You know, each generation they get more and more advanced, and the characters look more and more realistic. The same thing is happening in the movies with CGI. And honestly, I probably wouldn't have picked this movie to go see myself, but this girl that I'm seeing wanted to see it, and of course, why not? You know, right? I mean, when you're with your lady, you want to please her, and I said, sure, why not? Let's go see it. And I went in, you know, because I've heard some reviews on it, and I heard that it was like really bad, horrible, blah, blah, blah. So I went in thinking like, you know, I'm going to be bored. But it wasn't actually too bad. I think I put it above the Eddie Murphy movies, to be honest with you. Because the Eddie Murphy movies were pretty silly, and they knew what they were. They were comedy movies. But this movie was a little bit more fantasy, a little bit more adventure. And yes, it was geared towards kids, but I think it's a decent family movie. And I didn't hate it. Would I go and see it again in the theaters? Probably not. Will I own it when it comes out on 4K or Blu-ray? Definitely not. But it was nice. It was a decent way to pass the time. And I didn't walk out saying, you know, I wish I didn't see that movie. I didn't hate it. I didn't think it was terrible. I thought it was actually decent. And I don't regret seeing it. It was fun, I guess is what I'm trying to say. It was a fun movie, and it knows what it is. It doesn't try to be anything else. I think for people that didn't grow up on Dr. Doolittle from the olden days, before Eddie Murphy and the Eddie Murphy movies, I think it's a decent movie to check out. And I think they take more from the novels than the other movies do, because it takes place in olden times. It's very classical looking. Like when you go into the Queen's domicile, you know, everyone's wearing the wigs and, you know, looking very dress sharp. It's not modern looking, is what I'm trying to get at. I think when they go for a sort of period piece looking movie, it brings some sort of like sensibility where you kind of end up saying, yeah, I recognize the time period that they were in, or the time period that they're trying to replicate. And that works when you're trying to tell a story that's older. I think the Eddie Murphy movies brought it to modern times and modern sensibilities, and it worked in some instances it didn't. I like the fact that they took a different route with this one. They didn't just try to say, okay, let's just do what they did with the Eddie Murphy movies and make it funny, silly, modern, and all this stuff. They just kind of said, let's do our own thing. Let's make it more like a story, more like you're reading a novel. And that's what I felt like, is like this is how the novel is. This is what the novel makes you feel when you're reading it, is what this movie is trying to make you feel. So I appreciated that, and I appreciated that they didn't just make the movie like really cheesy, and it would have been really easy to, because the other Dr. Doolittle movies were pretty cheesy. What I'm trying to say is that the movie was decent, and I recommend it for kids, adults if you want to bring your kids, or the whole family. I don't recommend it if you're a single guys night out, let's go check out Dr. Doolittle. But that's probably obvious. It's a decent date movie, obviously, and it's a good family movie. So that's how I see it, and I'm going to give it a B. There's my review for Dr. Doolittle. Stay tuned because I got one more for you. See you in a bit.
Get on your bike and ride.